Citation 251, Case Notes of Detective Corey Williams, August 28, 2008. FBI report from the interview of Chris Bush's older brother, Charles Nels Bush, in New York City. We received the facts report today from Special Agent McDonald of the FBI on the interview of Charles Bush that he and his partner conducted at Bush's part-time residence at Redacted. Charles Bush was cooperative and agreed to an interview with the agents. Charles Bush was somewhat hesitant at first to supplying agents with a sample of his DNA, but later agreed, but with conditions. These conditions are listed on the second page, which shows page number 4 at the top of the following FBI report that I scanned into this ongoing report. And this was something that we covered earlier back. It is interesting that Charles Bush has conditions to supplying DNA as far as us notifying him prior to making any announcement, like a press conference, on the results of the DNA. He also requested that prior to the task force making any announcement about Christopher Bush's DNA in the OCCK case, that Bush family members in Michigan be allowed to enter a witness protection type program. We also covered that. According to McDonald's report, Charles Bush was adamant about these conditions being agreed to prior to supplying his DNA. See the following FBI report for details of the interview. Yeah, so again, witness protection from what exactly? We have a repeat here for citation 252. We return here to the FBI report on interview with Charles Nels Bush from April 22nd, 2008. This was what was just being referred to. And this is to repeat this particular detail of what Charles says about advising that his family never talked about the Oakland County child killing case or whether Chris could have been involved, but Charles advised that later in life his father, which is H. Lee Bush of General Motors, shredded all of the family documents to include birth certificates, which Charles stated was strange. Citation 255 comes from a now deleted website that was published by Barry King, the father of Timothy King, who was the fourth and final victim of the Oakland County child killings. He previously had a website that was entitled A Father's Story that appeared to be basically used by him to chronicle excerpts of a book that he was working on entitled A Father's Story, Oakland County Child Killer. So this is retrieved through Internet Archive, excuse me. And this text is taken directly from that. Richard Lawson, a convicted murderer and pedophile activist in the Detroit Cass Avenue corridor, wrote me a letter and asked for a meeting to discuss the OCCK case. I had met Lawson previously and had little respect for him. Dave Binkley of my law firm agreed to visit with him. Binkley was under instructions not to talk to him about anything other than the Christopher Bush involvement. Lawson advised Binkley that his associate Bobby Moore used to take young boys to visit with H. Lee Bush, the father of Christopher Bush. Lawson has subsequently died, and I am not aware as to whether or not the task force followed up on this information. Citation 256, the case notes of Detective Corey Williams, April 7, 2006. Interview of Terry Redacted. John Owlett and I went and interviewed Terry Redacted today on Flora Street in Detroit. Sharon Redacted answered the door. We interviewed Terry for approximately 45 minutes at his kitchen table. We didn't tell Terry that we had talked to Redacted a few days prior to him. During the course of this interview, Redacted identified Ted Orr right away when I showed him a known photo of Lamborghini. Terry admitted a sexual relationship between he and Bob Moore, but said that it took place on 14th Street in Detroit and not on Henry Street. Redacted also said that Moore prostituted him out when he was a young teenage boy, stating that Moore drove him to a home on a lake in Pontiac, Michigan, and the older white man, Bill, that he had sex with, had a large boat docked in front of the house. Redacted went on to say that the homeowner paid Moore the money, and Moore in turn gave him some money for letting the homeowner perform oral sex on him. This matches information from Lawson, who had stated in earlier interviews that he and Moore took a young boy to a Chrysler executive's home on the east side, possibly in Warren, back in the mid to late 70s, and the executive paid Moore to have sex with the boy. This also matches information from Tony Kowalczyk. See his interview. See John Owlett's interview supplement on Terry Redacted interview for more details. Citation 257 comes from a comment that was on Kathy Broad's blog. Kathy Broad King is the sister of Timothy King. This actually isn't from like a literal comment on a post that you can go back and see on her post. This is actually within the post, a post of hers itself, where she is basically commenting on a comment she got elsewhere. And the post in question of what this is from is the OCCK Labyrinth from May 20th, 2016, from Kathy Broad's blog. So she's writing this. Here's a comment I received today on an earlier post that reminded me I needed to post. Hi, Kathy. I was a teenager in Detroit at the time, and my father had a stamp and coin store at Eastland Shopping Center. One of his customers was E. Harwood Rideholm, a big executive at Chrysler. Mr. Rideholm told my dad that the OCCK was the son of a powerful GM exec, and that the police were protecting GM's reputation, so he probably wouldn't be arrested. Mr. Rideholm passed away in 1987. The ghastly part is that Mr. Rideholm told my father this shortly after Christine Mihalik went missing. Citation 258 is a copy of an email that was received by Kathy Broad and that she uploaded on her blog entry entitled Going Forward from October 28th, 2019. So on the left here is part of the actual post in which she's talking about being sent this, and then you can see she provides the download link to a snapshot of this email, and then on the right is that email. So Kathy writes, today, consider this horrifying email I received. I redacted it for obvious reasons. The writer specifically says, I tried to tell law enforcement for investigative purposes. Law enforcement has not replied to my calls, only informed me they were very busy. She then provides the link. Very busy. So here's the email. My redacted GM executives and other affluent men like Dick Chrysler of Cars and Concepts at the time. There was a highly organized underground child pornography cult in the Oakland area in 1976. The children were taken to the house of the personal accountant and primed for filming. We were passed around various babysitters to prep us for movies in secrecy. Several of the boys were so brutally sodomized they were hospitalized. Many did not survive. What your blogger that grew up in Detroit is saying is probably true. I was there and I only survived redacted. One of the first responders at the scene, a family friend, came to warn us of what the GM employer's son had done in the writing across the windshield of the car, which said, "The devil made me do it." I tried to tell local law enforcement for investigative purposes. Law enforcement has not replied to my calls, only informed me they were very busy. My God, we played with the same dogs during filming, and I know the massive storage shed out back is covered in our DNA. The movies were collected and transported in VHS Scooby-Doo cases by the box loads, I assume for production and or distribution. Much of the evidence was burned around 1978, and it was very important we were all kept immaculate. which that very much rings the bell of the victims of the OCCK killings being kept very clean when they were um, abducted and then found in very clean, of very clean persons on them. I have considered reaching out to your dad many times, but I am afraid. I have photo albums of myself interviewing, unclothed, with strange children I can only assume were also involved. I remember my training, no matter how I try to forget. I also remember a tall, long-haired brunette girl in a white eyelet ankle-length dress with a red sash, um, sparing me from a filming session once. I never saw her again. I have the names of everyone mentioned above, with the exception of the eyelet angel that probably saved my life. I was one of the children that lived. I know the house layout and previous owner, the names of a few responsible dead and still living, and their new name and location. Another survivor in hiding, and the type of dogs we all played with. These are very powerful men, and I fear for my and my children's safety. Trust no one, not even the parents. Citation 259. Letter sent to Barry King from February 7th, 2014, as uploaded on Kathy Broad's blog post. When I heard the details, GM executive, organized ring of sexual abuse, etc., my blood ran cold. And this post was from December 13th, 2020. So same kind of deal here. You can see on the left the content of the actual post, uh, where she describes, um, seeing this letter, and then provides a download link to read the letter. So Kathy writes, I'm going through an overwhelming 18-plus high stack of emails, letters, and documents that I had to put to the side in order not to drown over the past couple of years. Here's a copy of a letter sent to my dad about 4 years ago. For obvious reasons, identifying information has been obscured. So this letter from February 7th, 2014. Mr. King, please find enclosed a check for $20 for the DVD. I found your daughter's blog only last night, and I will put the link out in my network. The DVD he's referring to here is, I believe it's called Decades of Deceit. This was a very comprehensive documentary that the King family put out at the time of the police chicanery really kind of being at its worst as far as the investigation goes. This was like in the early 2010s. That's basically them walking through the um, bungling, basically, of the entire investigation. And they put it out on DVD. Please send the DVD to, and then it's redacted. I grew up in Southfield in the 70s. This case was and is the first major imprint of my childhood and has always been in the back of my mind, so to speak, throughout my life. By way of a personal related anecdote, a woman very close to me was the daughter of a GM executive who served at that company at the same time Bush's father was there. She was sexually abused as a child by her father and several of his professional associates throughout the mid to late 1970s. In the late 90s, we engaged a private investigator to help prepare a legal case against her father and these monsters, and among the investigator's conclusions was the theory that there existed an organized ring of pedophiles within GM's executive management at the time, and that offering up a child was a kind of ticket into the upper ranks of management. By the way, the investigator, who was from the West Coast, met with a certain degree of cooperation from local law enforcement, but was told time and time again, don't waste your time, the case won't go anywhere. Alas, time and money were not on our side. We were not able to pursue the case, and the woman's father left the state, took ill, and died before I could question him myself in a more direct manner. I never heard of Bush until the media came out with that story a few years ago. When I heard the details, GM executive, organized ring of sexual abuse, etc., my blood ran cold. May God give you strength to continue fighting the good fight. Thank you. Sincerely, redacted. Citation 261 is FBI victim statement, file number 31CDENEW, Milford, Michigan, June 19, 1992. This serves as the testimony of an unnamed woman who had firsthand experience within this larger pedophile ring in Michigan. Basically commandeered by these very powerful bigwigs, including many with affiliations with GM and other corporations. Let me take a drink of water here quickly, sorry. So we're going to read through this. This comes from the Hot Star website. And again, this is July 6, 1992. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. Redacted, after having been advised of the identity of the interviewing agent and the nature of the interview, furnished the following information. Redacted advised that following redacted diagnosis with redacted, began to have flashbacks of history of sexual abuse which occurred in their family. Redacted stated that the return of her memory coincided with redacted's. Be a whole lot of redactions here. Also helped by redacted entering counseling, the following redacted advised that it was long redacted. That initiated recall of what she described to be childhood sexual abuse which occurred in her family, to include a ring of child abusers and the witnessing of the homicides of 2 children. Redacted advised that it was not until redacted that she was able to bring about full recall of an incident that occurred in which she believes to be approximately 1976. Redacted stated that this incident involves her and her sister, redacted, and her father, redacted, date of birth redacted, according to redacted, while she and her sister, redacted, looked on, redacted, was attempting to quiet the screams of a small boy whom she tentatively identified as redacted. The boy was described as being approximately 5 to 8 years old with blonde curly hair. Redacted stating that as the boy knelt on the ground, her father brought back what she described to be a baseball bat and struck the boy in the head. Redacted stated she then recalled the boy falling down and not moving, and somehow knowing that the boy was dead. According to Redacted, both she and her sister, Redacted, discussed between each other that the boy, indeed, had died. Her next recall of that situation was that her father was somehow discussing what to do with the boy's body. Redacted then explained that she witnessed a second homicide of a 9-year-old female whom she cannot identify. Redacted stated that she was approximately 12 years old at the time of this death. Redacted does not recall where the death took place or who took the girl's life. Redacted could only remember that she was in an office which to her at the time appeared to be a doctor's office, and that a girl approximately 9 years old was lying naked on an examining table. The girl had long, dark brown hair. The girl appeared to be, in redacted words, prepubescent, and becoming very frenzied regarding this treatment as a result. Redacted, an individual, it appears to be an attempted redaction there, began to what appeared to be stabbing the girl in the stomach, and then she remembers the girl falling off the table and lying on the ground in an awkward angle. Redacted then remembers that there was some discussion on what would be done with this girl. So this is just absolutely just the most nightmarish thing you could just ever imagine. Redacted stated that she believes her father was involved at the time in a pedophile or child abuser's ring. She stated that her father recruited members for this ring from his associates and from members of St. Joseph's Church, which is located in Dexter, Michigan. She stated that at the time her father was employed at Redacted as Redacted in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Redacted further stated that there was an individual whom she cannot identify residing in Ann Arbor who was the ringleader for this particular organization of people. She stated the only thing she can recall is that he was a very prominent and powerful person in the Ann Arbor community. She stated that he was a very large man with dark hair and possibly a beard. Redacted also advised that redacted, date of birth redacted, telephone number redacted, also molested her and had sexual intercourse with her until she was 18 years of age. She stated that there was also an individual identified as Redacted who owned and operated a practice on Main Redacted in Dexter, Michigan. According to Redacted, Redacted performed an abortion on her sister Redacted, who was pregnant with her father's child. Redacted stated that her father forced her to watch this abortion with the plan that if Redacted was sufficiently shocked at the situation, she would not become pregnant. Redacted also advised that an individual identified as Redacted was a childhood friend and may have some memories of this abusive situation. Redacted did remember that when constituting this child pornography or pedophile ring would come together, they were usually occupying a shed near a gravel pit in Dexter, Michigan. She cannot recall any further details regarding the meetings or their locations other than this particular place. Redacted advised that she is currently redacted at the Redacted. She stated that it was through a colleague there named Redacted that she became aware that she should report her recall of this abuse to some type of law enforcement authority. Redacted stated that she absolutely will not report any of these incidents to the Dexter Police Department or any local police department, that she feels that somehow during the time of this abuse, circa 1975 to 1976, some police officers were somehow involved.